The annual report card is called The Dirty Truth, and honestly, it hasn't looked that great in recent years for JEA. Today, we're talking to two local environmental advocates about the changes they'd like to see. I'm joined by John Burr, former editor of the Jacksonville Business Journal and current editor of the Jacksonville Climate Coalition newsletter. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Ann.
We're also joined by Larry Zwane. He is the Northeast Florida Sierra Club chair. Larry, welcome back.
Thank you, Ann. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So we should also note we did reach out to JEA last week and invite them to participate in this segment, and they declined. But that is an offer that remains open. So I'm going to start with a topic that everybody's interested in, John, including our governor, and that is the arrival of AI data centers. This is something that you reported in your newsletter a few months back, and I think is interesting for people to be aware of. Basically, JEA saying that they've received several inquiries about possible relocation or location of data centers here in this region, that would theoretically be using JEA's power grid.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's when you think about it, it's not too much of a surprise because these data centers are popping up everywhere. And Jacksonville has a pretty strong, pretty viable technology community here. So there would be, obviously, there'd be a lot of use that could go along with a data center here. But after that initial statement by JEA, we haven't really heard much about who's interested in data centers here or how soon they could pop up.
And we should say that when you spoke to the spokesperson for JEA, she said several inquiries about supporting new large data centers in our service territory that they've received several inquiries about that. So, John, just remind us, for people who aren't, following this issue, why are data centers of concern for communities?
Well, data centers are the business case here. Is they're the backbone of AI. You need to build out data centers in order to have good AI systems, artificial intelligence. They're concerned because they take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of electric consumption, and people just aren't used to having these huge industrial centers sited, anywhere near their neighborhoods.
And they're resource guzzlers to the extent that they consume a lot of water. Sometimes they produce noise that has been really problematic for communities, but electric is a big one. And so in some places they're moving into communities that have moved towards greener electric sources, greener sources of fuel, but now need much greater additional sources of fuel and are having to expand.
Right. I think nationally the projections are that 10% of the electricity produced in this country by 2030 will just be going to data centers.
Right. And currently
that's from nothing, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. So Larry, the reality of data centers is something utility companies are dealing with around the country. We don't know for sure what's going to happen. As John said, that's just inquiries that JEA has gotten. But the Sierra Club has concerns about the environmental footprint of the city's utility for a variety of reasons. And I mentioned in the opening that you all delivered kind of a gift of sorts to JEA over the holidays. It was a delivery of Christmas coal. So explain to us, what was the genesis of that? Why did you make that delivery? What message are you sending?
Thank you. And we're sending a message that we want JEA to remember about they do have two coal-fired generating plants on the north side of town, the north side generating station. And what coal does is that is air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, because what the toxic gases from coal and coal ash, coal coke to burn have mercury in them, arsenic, lead, and you can have banks of guards against, but it leaks and it gets into the St. Johns River, and it's just dangerous. And the people who live within a, let's say, 5-10 mile radius, they're affected by this in terms of increased asthma and just breathing in general is more difficult, and it's just unfair. And JEA is a good company with good people, and they've closed coal before, And these two plants have been open for over 50 years, from the 60s and 70s. So time is enough. And just tell us when they're going to close them. If it can't be tomorrow, when will they close? They've never said they will. Even their IRP, says they will. Doesn't
Explain
say
their
when.
IRP is their
Integrated Resource Plan. Came out.
Integrated Resource Plan.
They're
Okay.
supposed to do that every 3 years. So the next one will probably be out, worked on this year, published probably in 2027. And it's got a lot of good stuff in it. But this coal, I mean, just tell us when you're going to close it. Close it.
So coal has been, traditionally was a big source of fuel for JEA. As recently as just a few years ago, they had about almost half of their portfolio was sort of coal based, but they have made a lot of progress in part by decommissioning the old St. Johns River Power Park. That was the plant that people would recognize. It sort of looked like a nuclear power plant because it had these big cooling towers, but those were demolished. That came down, and they really have shifted away from coal. It's now a much smaller part of what they burn. They say they typically burn it when it's, in kind of not a crisis situation, but like a really high usage, extreme temperatures time of year. So, I mean, do they deserve some credit for having made the progress that they've made in terms of reducing the amount of coal that they're burning?
Some credit, yes, they do, of course. And like I said, they're good folks. They know what the heck they're doing most of the time at most things, but not in renewables. They've been very cautious or overcautious, and the status quo is missing a huge opportunity to improve. That's what the future is going to be in renewables. But let's get back to what you said about coke, or coal, and does burn some coke. But is that they are better, but there's still two there on the north side that are open and need to close.
Right. And we're saying, granted, they've done a lot toward getting rid of coal, but they need to close the deal. There's no reason for them to still have a coal plant. It's antiquated technology. The reason they closed the coal plant is because economically it made no sense, the large one that you spoke of earlier. And they still don't make sense economically. They need to close the deal and just get rid of it.
And this is just a couple of units that even burn coal anymore. Is that right? At Northside Generating Station, it's just a limited amount.
But it's just too much.
Just too much.
And according to their own budget reports in 25 and 26, they plan to invest between $25 and $29 million in capital expenditures strictly attached to the coal burning capabilities of Northside. And that's our money.
That's because they're 50-year-old plants and they're falling apart. I mean, it really.
Yeah.
You just got
Maintenance is difficult.
It's huge. It's a huge deal.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to John Burr and Larry Zwane about the recent failing grade given to JEA by the Sierra Club. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org, and you can find all of the ways that you can connect with us there. We've got a call from Bruce on the west side. Good morning, Bruce. Go ahead.
Good morning. I like your show, and I'm really calling. I've heard on an earlier show and today, the modern data centers of today's design use very little water. They use a technology called closed loop cooling, and after the first fresh take, it uses very little water. And I just wanted to kind of help correct that narrative.
That's good information, Bruce. Is that for new facilities coming online or old facilities, existing facilities that are being retrofitted?
No, new data centers. It's very, very inefficient to try to retrofit a existing data center. Just they weren't designed for that. New data centers have what they call liquid to the chip cooling and immersion cooling in it, and actually the cooling element is not water. And I just and they've made great strides in being very efficient water users, and I just wanted to help correct that.
That's very good, Bruce. And so it's sort of, just for numbers, it's been my understanding that a larger facility can consume several millions of gallons per day, but that a good sized facility can be in the billions of gallons per year. Does that accord with your understanding?
Unfortunately, no. The modern data centers know they have to be more sustainable, And granted, the early data centers of say 10 years ago, they're large water users because they use evaporative cooling.
Mm-hmm.
Closed loop cooling is a new technology, and with AI and machine learning, and the computer racks of today are 50, 60, even 100 kW per cabinet. The data centers in Jacksonville, the majority of them are legacy built, and they support maybe 10 to 15 to 20 kW per cabinet. And once you get up 50 kW per cabinet and higher, water can no longer be efficient. You have to go to a closed loop cooling, and that's what all the new modern data centers are now using.
Bruce, thanks. It sounds like you've got some expertise in the field.
Yes, I head up data center solutions for CBRE in the state of Florida, and I'm based here in Jacksonville.
Very good. Well, thanks so much for calling in, Bruce. I appreciate your input. John, your thoughts about that? I mean, we were talking a lot about the electrical use element. Does that give you some comfort to know that perhaps the future of data centers are less intensive when it comes to water use, at least?
Sure. I mean, the less water they use, the better, obviously. Our concern is their electricity use and the effect that's going to have on rates and the availability of electricity.
Yeah. So one of the things that you have been looking at, in addition to coal, Larry, is the use of just fossil fuels in general, trying to urge JEA to move to renewables, to solar, to other kinds of energy sources. But they have recently committed to building what may be the largest city infrastructure project, cost-wise, this new natural gas plant that's going to be, I guess, at the site of the old St. Johns River Power Park. Is that right?
Yes, it's a combined cycle gas, natural gas, and it is what they have said they want to do. And I'm quoting from their own website in last year. They said, building on our long history of supporting solar power, JEA is embarking on a major solar expansion. And that's for several good reasons. I mean, they've got logic. The decreasing costs of solar technology has been happening faster and faster. The costs of solar photovoltaic technology have been declining significantly over the last 10 years due to advances in technology and economies of scale, increased market competition, made it solar energy one of the cheapest sources of electricity. And guess what? The fuel doesn't cost anything. It's the sun.
I mean, so they're saying that that's their commitment. What is your objection to that?
That they're not doing anything about it. They have bought the land for the to put the solar panels and create a solar power, but they haven't done anything about it. They've been sitting on it and saying, but not doing.
So it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's basically 3 solar fields that are expected to come online by the end of 2026. Those are kind of in progress. Is that happening?
We haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it. Okay. I mean, there was a larger project that was supposed to be taking place, and there was, I know that there was a project that fell through that was going to be a sizable.
That got shelved last year.
Uh-huh.
There were difficulties with the financing, I believe.
Okay. We've got a call from JD in San Marco. Good morning, JD. Go ahead.
Good morning. Little background on me. I was the co-founder of a little company called First Solar. You may have heard of it. Anyway,
sure have.
4 years ago, I'm the one that gave JEA the idea of taking all of those empty land with all those landfills sitting directly behind the St. Johns River plant and using waste to energy 4.0, which is solar, wind, plasma gasification, and thermals from the methane gas. Why they're not doing it, I don't know. Well, if they just simply took and put solar all over it, we'd have something. Like I said, I told them to do this 4 years ago. Like I said, I've got a little background behind this. I know a little thing or two about it. But yet, they didn't do anything and have not done anything. Now, here's another fun fact. The airport, you remember the fire? Go look back at the pictures of my solar panels I put up there in 1995. God, I wish Dickerson was still in charge of JEA. He was the most forward-thinking man that ever ran JEA in the history of JEA. We put all the little solar banks on all the schools, the one at JEA. JEA right here and in Denver Mile High Airport in 1995 were the first two airports to go solar. It was my solar panels. Back then it was called Solar Cells Inc. before we went public and changed the name to First Solar. But like I said, it doesn't matter what you say or do to the JEA people now. They have a wonderful, wonderful way of talking about what they're going to do, but then they don't ever do it.
Thanks, JD. Appreciate it. Thanks for your historical input there. So, Larry, what is your thought about, what can you tell us about the progress that they have made? There was a time when a very, very small portion of what JEA was producing was solar powered. Has the number moved?
Not really. They have said that it has doubled, and it's gone all the way from 0.1% to 0.2%. So that's double. But no, they haven't really done anything.
You know, they committed 3 years ago to having 35% renewable energy by 2030.
And was that part of their integrated?
Yes. Integrated resource plan. They have
Okay.
to do that every 3 years.
And so they said they're going to be at 35%
renewable energy by 2030. That's 4 years from now. Time flies.
Where are they now?
Show me the plans.
Where are they now in terms of their energy, their renewable energy proportion?
Well, if you include the nuclear power they're getting from Plant Vogtle in Georgia, I believe they're about 12 to 15%.
Okay.
And you know, they're still 22% short of where they said they were going to be, and they got 4 years to do it. And you tell me where the plants are. I don't see any plans forthcoming. All I hear about is gas plants.
So what is the concern? The natural gas plant that they're talking about building, this $1.5 billion project, it is a cleaner form of energy than coal. This is a utility that traditionally had been burning things like coal and pet coke. And,
Correct.
As you said, in addition to being greenhouse gas sources, coal is a source of mercury and arsenic and all kinds of other pollutants. Is it not better that they're moving towards natural gas? What is the objection there, John?
It is better. It's better than coal, which is the absolute worst. The objection is that they're going to put Jacksonville into a 40-year cycle of burning fossil fuels. When you build one of these plants, look at the coal plants. It's been open 50 years. They stay open for a long time. At a time when alternative energy, green energy, mostly solar, is just surging in use, and I think they're going to be in a situation in 5 years or so where people are going to look back and say, why did we put all this money into a gas plant when we could have built a solar capability that is much cheaper, much cleaner, and we can get it up a lot faster, and we can get up a solar plant. By the way, $1.5 billion for that solar plant is not accurate. It's going to be $3 billion or more.
Explain that, because that's their estimate, right? 1.5.
It was their estimate 2 years ago.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with the cost of the gas turbines that you have to have installed to run one of these plants. Getting back to the data centers are so popular around the country now that everybody's ordering these gas turbines to build gas plants. So the cost of that equipment has gone up through the roof. There's other reasons also, but I think that's the big part of it. Larry, is there anything else?
Well, the cost is one, yes, and also the time it takes to get. It is way more than a couple of years. It's more like at least 3 to 7 years to get those gas turbines that they want. So it's sort of a fallacy to think that it's going to be as fast as they are currently saying. And that's not anti-JEA. It's just, come on, face the facts.
We've got a call from Peter in Arlington. Good morning, Peter. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I just want to touch on a point that a lot of people, I don't know if they gloss over or even think about, but I follow the financial news, and I've been reading in the energy sector that the price of natural gas is expected to increase probably about 75, 80% just this year alone. and it's going to continue to rise. So, natural gas is a variable cost for JEA, and I think we can expect to look forward to increased energy costs.
That is something to be considered. Are they weighing in? I mean, how do they approach the cost of a project when it comes to the variability of something like the cost of fuel?
It'd be great if we could hear from them about that. I wish they'd showed up today and explained some of these things. But this is a very complicated technical business, and they have the answer to that.
So one of the things, Larry, that the Sierra Club has been asking of JEA is for a commitment to clean fuel, and specifically by asking for a commitment for 100% renewable energy by 2050. First of all, I just would ask if you think, based on current realities, whether that is realistic, but also I want to talk a little bit about the changing regulatory landscape that this utility and every utility is up against, which, we've seen from kind of the Obama administration to the Trump administration to the Biden administration to the Trump administration, just these huge swings in terms of how much mercury you can emit, whether you have to shut down your coal fire plant, whether you get infrastructure billions to put up green energy, and then now an administration that's essentially stopped projects that are almost set to launch, wind powered turbines that are halfway built. So I would imagine that it is very difficult for any utility to plan for the future, one, and to do so in a way that's responsible for their ratepayers or their shareholders or whoever, knowing that things could just turn on a dime once again.
Very true. And let's get back 1 second to the cost of the fuel. And again, the point I was making is the sun shines every day. The battery power is there now and is getting better and better and less expensive. So you have it in storage, batteries. So the sun doesn't have to be shining in order to use that power. And the volatility of natural gas prices, like the gentleman said, that isn't going to change. That's going to be around, and so prices are going to largely go up. Second point is that the operating costs of a solar park and what it takes to operate, and the complexity of operating something like a combined cycle gas plant, huge differences. So the operating costs are a lot less for solar than for natural gas.
So could I steer you back, though, to the regulatory issue? Because that is, I think, of a real concern for some.
Well, could I read something here from
Sure.
Florida Power and Light? Now, Florida Power and Light obviously has to deal with all these regulatory considerations that you listed, which are valid. But this is what Florida Power and Light put out just a month ago. Right now, solar and battery storage is the most cost-effective and fastest to deploy way to meet Florida's growing energy needs. Solar is one of the lowest cost forms of new power generation available today. And battery storage allows us to store that energy and deliver it when it's needed most, especially during peak demand or after sunset. So this is the leading energy or electricity company in the state of Florida.
This is FPL.
FPL. They are moving aggressively into solar. They're dealing with all these regulatory problems you said. That's what we'd like to see JEA to do, is to take a much more aggressive look at using solar power. I think if they did, they would find that it's a really viable and a great alternative, especially long term, because that's the way the industry is moving. They're moving towards solar.
Larry.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. That is essential to the power industry across the country in terms of grid. You have AI centers coming on, and what you need in terms of grid load for power plants is we'll have to be importing power if they don't get enough power quick enough. And the quickness of being able to do solar is way ahead of the gas turbine.
I want to talk a little bit about health impacts, because that's something that was analyzed in a recent study that you all have pointed to as a concern with the direction that JEA is going. And this is, research that not only looks at health impacts, but also the financial cost associated with those, whether it's through lost productivity or missed days at school. Can you talk a little bit about what the analysis has showed, what you're worried about in terms of health impacts?
Well, as I said earlier about coal, that it's, and we've talked about that, the mercury and lead and arsenic in the supply of coal ash in neighborhoods around the plants, and the air gets to all of us, so we have to breathe it. And it affects cost of length of life, and it affects asthma and lungs, and it does slow people down.
John, in terms of the climate impacts of fossil fuel, I mean, we haven't really talked about that. That's sort of one of those things that we know exists, but Florida obviously has its own uniquely imperiled landscape, whether it's from water or storm intensity, heat.
Heat for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about just what you believe a Florida utility ought to be considering when it comes to the fuel that it's choosing?
Well, I think we all need to consider, the burning of fossil fuels in our own lives, whether it's through cars or like when we turn on electric power. But, really, to be honest with you, this debate is going to turn on economics, in the sense that what's going to power alternative fuels in this country in the next 10 or 20 years is that they're going to be a lot cheaper and a lot cleaner than burning fossil fuels. And that's the bottom line is the bottom line here.
In 7 years from now, I would guess that whatever battery storage capability is available or the efficiency of a solar farm is only going to grow.
Correct.
I mean, there has been some criticism of just the amount of land that solar requires, whether that's having its own environmental footprint. Is there a sense that collecting that sun energy will require less space, less intensive operations than existing solar farms?
That's a great question. As the other caller mentioned, there's a lot of places we could put solar panels. We could put them on the roofs of warehouses. We could put them on defunct landfills. There's a lot of places to put solar panels, and this is what's happening in Texas and California right now. That issue is really not that much of an issue when you come right down to it.
So I did mention that we had invited JEA to come on the program. I do just want to read a statement that they issued. Just in fairness, they said, "We will continue to evaluate the most cost-effective and reliable options for our customers as conditions and resources evolve. Our long-term planning for the best ways to provide energy to our customers reliably, cost-effectively, and sustainably is an ongoing process. We consistently evaluate market and economic factors to ensure we are obtaining the most cost-effective and reliable generation for our customers." Larry, just your last thoughts.
It's very good. I'm glad they are. And why don't they take a look at what other states are doing and other opportunities that have been successful? Colorado's one. An interesting one is I was just up in Vermont, and they've got solar panels covering vegetation and growing vegetables that don't require as much sunlight. Instead of greenhouses, you can put solar panels and let that be your greenhouse. They've done it, and it's working.
A place with a lot less sunshine, too.
Yes.
Well, John Burr, Larry Zwane, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
You bet.